When I think about the Rolling Stones, of course there's Mick and Keith. Then there's Ronnie Wood. But why doesn't his guitar playing get the love that it deserves? It should. I first really got into the Stones from their Some Girls album. I still enjoy listening to that album, both for its individual songs and its overall vibe. And yeah, the Stones were great performers, but they showed on this album that they were a darn good band too. And Ronnie Wood had a lot to do with that, the way that he and Keith weaved together their guitars. For example, there's this. Or how about this one from Tattoo You? Again, Ronnie weaves in a part with Keith that's quite clever, providing counter rhythm without stepping on Keith's iconic riff. So I always thought of Ronnie Wood as being part of the Stones, and he certainly fits. But something else was happening with me at that time as well. I was becoming an even bigger fan of Rod Stewart's Every Picture Tells a Story album. In fact, that album was a big part of the fabric of my life in high school. Imagine my surprise when reading the liner notes that Ronnie Wood was the main guitarist on the album, and that he co-wrote the title cut as well. Now I get it. Ron Wood is never going to make the top 10 guitarist lists, but there's a reason why he was so successful as a musician, and it goes way beyond his stage presence. His rhythm play with Keith, his slide work, his iconic sound and play on songs like Stay With Me. And how does he get that look where he's disheveled but he still looks totally put together? But one of his solos always stuck out for me, his solo on Maggie May. It's a clinic on expressive soloing and storytelling with guitar, and enhances the quality and the storytelling of the song itself. But what I really love about it is that non-guitarists enjoy it too. It has one of those truly memorable and singable guitar lines like in Bob Seger's Main Street. And yes, it heavily uses chord tones, but there's so much more too. Let's have a deeper look. First, to understand the general why does this work, we start with the chords. Here are the chords that are used in the solo. We have E minor, A, D, and G. These chords fit the key of D, so D major or D major pentatonic will likely work well as a framework. But it's just as important to know where the lines start and end. The first line starts on an E minor and ends on a G, and the whole thing ends and resolves on D. So when it comes to chord tones, those of E minor, G, and especially D are important. Here's how Ronnie resolves his lines on the first half of the main solo. The first line, over an E minor chord, ends on a B, which is a chord tone in E minor. And the last part ends on these two notes, a D and a B, which are both part of a G major chord, which is the end of the line. That was the first line where it resolves to G. Now here's the second line where it resolves to D. He's pretty much hitting the heck out of the D note, the root of the D chord. But this solo is not just about harmony and scales and chord tones. That's not even the half of it. I'll bet I can play just one line and you'd instantly know what song it is. Am I right? That's a perfect example of a hook in a solo, or if you want to sound more sophisticated, a motif. That idea hooks you right in and it flows throughout the whole solo. That's what makes it so memorable to people, that hook. But to use it over and over without letting it get boring, he uses a number of phrasing ideas to play it slightly differently each time. He uses ideas like slides, hammer-ons and pull-offs, bends, and he even varies the rhythm. That's why it's so important to practice your own phrasing. This solo is a treasure trove of ideas for that. And speaking of learning from this solo, if you really want to know all of it, line by line, click here, because that's exactly what I do in that video, take you through it line by line. So click here, I'll see you in the next video, and I'll see you on down the road.